Hey, good evening.
Recording in progress.
Good evening, 6 o'clock. Welcome to the monthly meeting of the Alameda County Water District. Board of Directors, will the Secretary please call the roll?
Directors Huang. Here. Sethy.
Here.
Weed.
Here.
Akbari.
Here.
And Gunther.
Here. Will Director Akbari lead us in this evening? Thank goodness, Stacey.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Gonna open it up to public comments. See none online, and there's no one in the room.
That's right, President Gunther. But if you'd like, I can just run through some quick housekeeping remarks for
With those, and a reminder, Director Sethy may be taking breaks this evening.
Not a problem. And also as housekeeping, our director of, okay, never mind, snuck in behind me. We're now fully staffed on the executive staff side. So welcome everyone on behalf of the ACWD Board of Directors. My name is Ed Stevenson and I serve as the district's general manager. Members of the public may participate in this board meeting in person or remotely by either using the Zoom application or by telephone. Any member of the public present in person who wishes to make comments may approach the speaker's podium at the appropriate time. For those participating remotely, note that the meeting agenda, staff reports, and presentation materials for this meeting are all available on the district's website at acwd.org. You may reference the instructions at the top of the agenda for how to participate using the controls in the Zoom app or your dial pad if participating by telephone audio. This board meeting is being recorded and will be made available to the public for future viewing. President Gunther, that completes my housekeeping remarks.
Okay. Back to public comments again. There still are no members of public. Just move forward once again. Yeah, Director Sethy, if you need to get up and leave at any point, feel free. Thank you. Moving on, would anybody like to add any items to the consent calendar this evening?
I will move to add items 5.1, 5.2, 5.3, 5.5, 5.6, 5.7, 5.8, 5.9, 5.10, 5.11 to the consent calendar. please.
Can I ask an opportunity to comment on 5.9?
Ooh, okay. I will modify my motion to add item 5.1 through 5.3, 5.5, 5.6, 5.7, 5.8, 5.10, and 5.11 to the consent calendar, please.
We have a
I
motion.
second that.
We have a second. Secretary, call the roll.
Directors Huang. Aye. Sethy.
Aye.
Weed.
Aye.
Akbari.
Aye.
And Gunther.
All right. Okay.
I'll move the consent calendar as amended.
Motion,
I'll second.
second. Secretary, call the roll.
Directors Huang. Aye. Sethy.
Aye.
Weed.
Aye.
Akbari.
Aye.
And Gunther.
Aye. And I guess moving on to item 5.4, Director Sethy, I think you were going to.
I asked for this to be pulled. There's no discussion required. My home is, that I own in Warm Springs is within 1,000 feet or just outside the perimeter of 1,000 feet. So I'm not required to recuse myself from voting on this, but I always like to just abstain from things that are too close. So we can take a vote. I'll just abstain.
Yeah, so
just do
be
it at
happy to
5.4.
cover the items. Staff's recommendation is for the board to authorize the amendment to professional services agreement for engineering and environmental services for the Alameda Reservoir roof replacement and Dakota Reservoir seismic improvements and roof replacement projects.
We have a motion.
I will move staff recommendation.
I'll second.
So second, Secretary, please call the roll.
Directors Huang. Aye. Sethy.
Aye.
Weed.
Aye.
This is the one, Director Sethy, that you were going to abstain.
Oh, I'm sorry, abstain.
Weed.
I blanked out. I apologize. Abstain.
Directors Weed.
Aye.
Akbari.
Aye.
and Gunther.
Aye.
I was at a momentary lapse because I wanted to say that I was at the reservoir yesterday and saw one concrete truck after another going in and pouring concrete. So it looks like they're making really good progress over there.
On which project?
Alameda Reservoir.
Okay.
So just for the record, that motion was approved 4-0 with Director Sethy abstaining. 4-0, and Sethy abstained. He did not vote. Thank you.
Item 5.9.
Well, actually, also for the record, I just want to introduce you. We have a member of the public came in. We already kind of talked about public comments. Bob Pratt is associated with the work we're doing with a local artist related to our 110-year anniversary mural, as I talked about with the board previously. Bob Pratt is the husband of Nancy Pratt, who's the artist, and I had a great conversation with Bob and Nancy yesterday, kind of talking about the work that they'll be doing, and really enjoyed our conversation. So welcome, Bob. Okay, so now 5.9. Okay, so 5.9 is authorization to enter into participation agreements with the Bay Area Water Supply and Conservation Agency for fiscal year 2024-25, water use efficiency programs and related services. And if you'd like, staff can read the staff report, or we can enter in whatever discussion you would like.
My comments are general and not directly related to a conflict or objection to any specific program, but put into context the situation of the district now and a little bit of its history in conservation. A few years ago, we did not participate in any of the Bosca conservation programs. This year, we're being asked to spend $353,500. In the past several years, we had an extraordinary drought. Now the drought is not there. And we're seeing, again, one of my soapbox, that the rate structure, as we're seeing a downward trend in our water consumption, it has a leveraged effect and a compounding effect that we're going into negative cash flows, and I believe a structural deficit. Problem is, we're not selling enough water, which we have adequate access to. The 353,000 was, the board on a 4-1 vote augmented the conservation program a couple of years ago to push as hard as we could as we were coming out of the drought. I felt that there was poor judgment because of, in great part, compounded by our rate structure. This is an expense which does not impact our personnel. It's totally contracted out through Bosca. So it is an opportunity if we do decide to reduce our expenditures and efforts in conservation, with a recognition that we have more than ample water to sell. Conservation for the sake of conservation is not sound business practice. Water's a good thing. Use it well, use it well. And when we've had great success in asking people to voluntarily conserve. This is more somewhat water efficiencies to extent, but primarily conservation, addressing behavior and offering rebates if people make investments in areas that unfortunately we don't have a rate structure which properly accommodates it. So bring it to your attention as and when we get into more of the finance discussions, what our revenues are, using debt financing to backfill the general fund. Think of where we're spending some of that money, and is it in the overall interest of the district to expand our conservation area, or should we recognize that droughts are episodic, should be viewed as a contingency, and you spend the money addressing conservation when you have a drought? We don't now. So thank you.
Further comments?
I'll make a quick comment. I happen to sit on the Water Resources and Conservation Committee. It came up in committee. There's a lot to respond there, Director Weed, but I'll keep it very short. I think for the amount of money that we're spending in this program, which is a very small percentage of our overall budget, we're helping build better habits amongst our customers, and we're helping them be more aware of the water that they're using. I don't see that as a negative, and so I understand your perspective, but I just wanted it on the record that I don't think there's agreement across the board on some of the comments that you shared.
I suggest there is a way to address my concerns, and that would be that rather than 2/3, let's say 353,000 results in several $1 million worth of reduced income to the district. 2/3 of that is coming out of the service charge. I mean,
We
it's a
will
fixed-
discuss the
fixed
service
cost.
charge in another meeting, Director Weed. Not here.
There, I'm showing how the implications of that dysfunctional rate structure, when we start applying savings in an area when you don't need savings, and
You're
we
getting
leveraged
kinda
up, and we
close,
did very
Director
well for
Weed.
many years when we were selling more water.
Can I,
Right now, selling less,
can I
we're
ask,
leveraged in the wrong
can I
direction.
ask the board to bring it back to the item in front of us, which is an amendment which is talking about water conservation and BOSCA? Is there a rate structure, please?
I'll make a motion to pass the resolution on item 5.9.
I'll second.
Secretary, call the roll.
Directors Huang,
Aye.
Sethy,
Aye.
Weed,
I will abstain, not because I'm the representative of the Bosque, and I think they do a good job. But for the reasons stated, I think it needs to be brought into a broader context when we go into these programs, particularly a financial context.
Director Akbari,
Aye.
and Director Gunther.
Item 512.
Okay, so item 512 is authorization of amendment number 6 to the cost share agreement for Los Vaqueros Reservoir Expansion Project Planning. And Ms. Heides will provide us with some more information, but I just want to provide a little bit of additional context first. This is about the multi-party agreement that everybody who's involved in the Los Vaqueros project is a member of. This multi-party agreement we call MPA. We are currently in MPA amendment number 5. ACWD has been part of this a group of agencies that are forwarding the Los Vaqueros Reservoir Expansion Project and working together on the various agreements and other work that needs to take place in order to move this forward. And all that work's being done under this multi-party agreement. This current MPA 5 that we're in now, this expires at the end of this fiscal year. And so that the MPA 6 would extend the multi-party agreement by another year. And so far, the Los Vaqueros Board of Directors, Los Vaqueros Reservoir Expansion Project, JPA Board of Directors, has taken action to approve MPA number 6. And then last week, the Contra Costa Water District Board of Directors passed MPA number 6. And in doing so, though, expressed some concern and some frustration with the JPA and with member agencies involved in the Los Vaqueros Reservoir Expansion Project about their level of transparency and about their commitment to the project. For the board's awareness, staff have communicated to Contra Costa Water District and the JPA and all the member agencies within the JPA, the same message that we've communicated with this board, and in fact, which was based upon the direction received from this board. For ACWD, it's all about the business case. It's always been about the business case and what the project will deliver to ACWD's customers, and the benefits that we hope to derive from the project, and at what cost and what risk to the district and to our customers. So it's all about the business case. That business case, though, depends in large part, very large part, on the various agreements that are being negotiated currently, as well as the conditions of various permits and approvals that define, how the project would work and what benefits may be derived by everybody within the JPA, together with the likelihood of receiving those benefits and whether they're commensurate with the investment that we would make. So it's all about business case. Staff remains wholly engaged in advancing the project and is in fact dedicating a tremendous amount of time and effort. And this agency has put forth a significant amount of ratepayer dollars to move this project forward. We are definitely working in any way we can to support advancement of those agreements, a clarity within the project, to try and improve the likelihood that this project would be successful and be able to deliver the envisioned benefits to everybody involved. So we do not see this as an us versus them proposition. We see this as a math problem and an assessment of cost and risk and benefit. So this item before the board this evening, staff is recommending that ACWD remain engaged and help to craft that problem into a solution that'll benefit all involved, including, importantly, our own customers. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Ms. Heides, who can tell us a little bit more about this item.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Stevenson. So as the board's aware, the Alameda County Water District has identified the Los Vaqueros Reservoir Expansion Project as an initiative for water supply reliability. The project seeks to increase the existing reservoir capacity from 160,000 acre feet to 275,000 acre feet and includes the construction of the Transfer Bethany pipeline for connecting the Contra Costa Water District system to the State Water Project at Bethany Reservoir. On April 30th, 2019, ACWD entered into a multi-party cost share agreement for Los Vaqueros Reservoir Expansion Project Planning, also known as the Cost Share Amendment or Multi-Party Agreement, to provide matching funds and in-kind services in support of an early funding award from the California Water Commission to continue development of the project and bridge the gap until a joint powers authority could be formed to oversee completion of the expansion and related improvements. The JPA was formed in October 2021 to provide a governance structure for the project, and ACWD became a founding member. The JPA is currently working on various analyses and agreements needed for the final award hearing at the California Water Commission. Amendment number 6 is being proposed to the existing cost share agreement at this time to continue planning and design activities through fiscal year 2024, 2025, essentially to align with the JPA's fiscal year as well and budget. So no additional funding is required for this amendment at all. Board authorization to approve the amendment number 6 to the cost share agreement will help meet the district's strategic plan goal 2.3, evaluate new and innovative water management concepts. So tonight's recommendation is by motion, authorize the general manager to execute amendment number 6 to the cost share agreement for Los Vaqueros Reservoir Expansion Project Planning with the Contra Costa Water District to extend the term through June 30, 2025. I'm happy to answer any questions.
No questions or comments.
Mine may be more of a comment than a question. But the questions may be rhetorical. I abstained on the twice so far on this issue, not because I had a conflict, but because I wasn't comfortable with the decision of the board to try to jump in on full bore. When this first came to us, we were told we did not have an option, which we've since learned we did have an option to deal with only the Bethany Transfer Pipeline. The second option was the Bethany Transfer Pipeline and some operational storage. And the third was full dedicated storage. The cost in our IRP is approximately $100 million for this project. It has serious flaws in the sense that there was the original concept of the water for the same amount of money. They could be building a 500,000 acre foot reservoir rather than merely 325,000 that could later be expanded to 1 million acre feet with saddle dams. They don't want to, Contra Costa doesn't want to do that because some of the water might go to Southern California. That help us. And the Bureau of Reclamation may be involved along the Corps. The record of decision would have allowed a 500,000 acre foot reservoir. It was passed in 2004. It's not being. The fact that we're not getting able to, we have a conga line, but it's clear from these discussions that the members of the conga line are not in step. And they're having some challenges because of some really curious requests. One of them being that the group that wants to make sure that no water, including a molecule of water, goes to Southern California, wants to have veto authority over any operational decisions on the facilities, potentially including the transfer aqueduct, even though they're not participating in it financially. We've agreed to a really curious, well, we have Bartel, when we were done under our, had agreed to reimburse Contra Costa, or had proposed, not agreed, proposed 40% of their costs adjusted for inflation from the date of construction. So well over 100% reimbursement to Contra Costa. Contra Costa is not participating in the dam reconstruction. They already own the watershed, but we're going to fully reimburse them for the cost of acquisition of that watershed. This doesn't make sense. The final business decision has not been made by the board, but so it's still to come, and hopefully it'll be a rational one. And I know we've got staff members that are involved as board members. They're involved in their finance committee and other issues. Questions, can state water be put into it? An example of how bizarre the policy is, for a nominal cost, they can increase the diameter from 8 feet to 10 feet, being able to handle 450 CFS from 350 CFS. The pump station is designed to handle 450 CFS. But they're artificially restricting the size, therefore restricting the ability to transfer water at a nominal cost. I'm going to abstain basically because I think it's a process that's ongoing and the final decision, thumbs up, thumbs down, hasn't come yet. But I'm troubled, and we don't have the ability to have a no vote on this board. You can go, I mean, clear this with attorney, yay, nay, or abstain. So that's my abstention is just in this case, the effect of a no vote on the issue at this time. Thank you.
Maybe just a quick comment, just for the record, and I see we have at least one other person who's joined us, just for the record and to be clear with the board and so that staff can be properly directed in the future. Staff has not been advocating for, a reservoir larger than that which is contemplated, reservoir expansion to the record of decision volume and so forth. Staff has not been advocating for, severely restricting the financial benefit that Contra Costa may receive as a result of the project. We are certainly working to ensure that there's fairness and that there's value for our agency. The staff is also not advancing the idea of a larger transfer Bethany pipeline, and so I just want to make sure that's clear to all involved. There are lots of thoughts about the project and different views as to how things may be done in a different way, but just so everybody's aware, these are not things that staff are pressing in discussions with the partners.
I could quickly add one more element. We're talking about getting a dedicated storage of about 10,000 acre feet. San Francisco reduced their request from 40,000 to 20,000 acre feet recently and may further reduce because, again, the ability to transfer when you can transfer becomes into question. And yet, for the comparison, I would argue that we had at least 7,500 acre feet with a minor modification to the operational criteria by the Corps of Engineers on Del Val. And the ability to have Del Val, which is built, plumbed, and paid for, is there with minor modifications to a intake. We could achieve the same result for a small fraction of the cost if we were to work, let's just look at Del Val. Thank you.
So I'm just gonna make a quick comment. So I think this motion in front of the board actually does not require additional funding, but keep the door open for ACWD to keep on evaluating and collect data to support our business case. So I definitely support this item, and I do appreciate General Manager make it clear to Contra Costa that the result of the business case is what's important to us and will drive, at least for me personally, if I would support this project or not. So I'm definitely looking forward to the business case, and yeah, this amendment is needed for us to continue to participate. So thank you.
Akbari. I've supported this almost from the start. However, we all have to work together on this. And working together doesn't mean following everything they say. They're going to have to work with us as well. We're in it, like we said, for a business case. Yes, we'd like to see this succeed. I think it should succeed. I think it has wonderful opportunities. A lot of the things that Director Weed has spoke on aren't necessarily incorrect. Some perceptions lead to problems. There's a lot of things that he's mentioned tonight that we need to ensure we get in place. That's why we have our team. Director Sethy being on the Finance Committee, we're well placed. And they're looking out for our best interest. So yes, I'll support 6. However, I think everybody needs to work together, and that includes Contra Costa with us. This has really good options. Trans-Bay pipe there, wonderful concept. I think we could, we should get this stuff in place and not let our differences cause it to fail. So this evening I'll be supporting it.
I'm going to put forward the motion to approve the staff recommendation, but I'd like to make a couple of comments now.
Go ahead.
First of all, the thought of a 10-foot diameter pipeline was well discussed by all participants. There was at 300 CFS and in emergency cases up to 450 CFS, there was not a single person or entity that was demanding any higher volume of water now or in the future. And when Director Weed and I were on a recent tour a couple of months ago, following the South Bay Aqueduct, we saw water that was running continuously at 50 CFS. That was all the demand that was in place for the 3 South Bay contractors. And that was sufficient to meet everybody's daily needs. As a result of those discussions, which already took place 2 years ago, we are now at the 90% engineering completion phase of pumping plant number 1, which would drive the volume of water in this pipeline. So it's done. It cannot be revised. And no one wants to go back to it among all of the member agencies. I can't even recall, aside from Director Weed, not one person has been dissatisfied with the decision as we've moved forward. So, and second, maybe Mr. Wunderlich can clarify this. This is going to cost the district something over the next fiscal year. We are continuing the cost sharing agreement, but on a a downscaled budget, which I'll cover later. And so we're just going to continue with the current costs of, as we're planning for, without any major capital investments or anything like that.
Yeah, so the JPA currently has enough funds saved from prior contributions to fund the expected efforts of the next fiscal year. And so there are no new contributions required, but they are continuing to spend our prior contributions.
Right, so no cost increase amendment.
I could make what I believe is a clarification on this. I support the Bethany Transfer Pipeline and the associated pumping plant. Pumping plant design, which is 90% complete, to my understanding, is a 450 CFS pumping plant, which ironically would support. The 8-foot will support 300 CFS. The 10-foot diameter would support the 450, which is the capacity of the plant, which is about to be built. So that is the disconnect.
But all participants collectively cannot see using more than 300 CFS a day, and only in an emergency situation. Let's say a major earthquake or one of the Delta pumps goes down or something like that. Then
Yeah.
we have the capacity to deliver a larger amount of volume of water. And, you know, you need to translate. I don't have the converter in front of me right now, but 300 CFS running 24 hours a day and compare that to 450 is a huge volume of water that we're talking about.
Let us put it in comparison to the 6,000 CFS of the Delta conveyance. And you mentioned the Delta pump going down. The mindset of Contra Costa is if it does, sorry about that, folks. We don't want you to use our water or our transfer pipeline. Therefore, we're going to restrict the size to 300 CFS. Out of this 6,000 CFS that would normally go down, be delivered through the Delta State Water Project, federal, and on the state side, plus the federal side, which has even more water. So it's a unfortunate and I think irresponsible mindset, which has been defined as a principle of the board of directors of Contra Costa, the people we're trying to do business with. We have a moral disconnect in my mind, from my personal point.
A quick rebuttal. Director, you and I both attended the California Water Commission meetings when they were talking about WISP funding from Prop 1 funds passed in 2014. And that's where they made the major award to this project. EWR and the California Water Commission understood the geographic nature of this project, how far water could be delivered, which is deep down into the San Joaquin Valley as it is right now. Delta Mendota Water Agency is comprised of 17 water agencies that go deep into the Central Valley.
And the water they're talking about was to deliver water to grasslands, to support birds and environmental issues and an otherwise swamp area that would, wetland area that would otherwise be drying up.
Is that a bad thing?
It is not in the context of the water supply needs of the state. Economically, it was to solely address environmental concerns. The water planning element was excluded from the discussions, and in order to appease the fears of Contra Costa board, that some water would go to be used beneficially by the communities.
Let me remind the board public as well. Prop 1 funds were passed by California voters to pay for public benefits. It was not to use the $10 billion to build new construction.
How many people who voted for the term public benefit, including myself, understood that that was not water to go to human consumption.
Can
Or
I-
agriculture. I love the conversation. However, I think we're getting a little bit off track.
I put forward the motion.
And so we do have a motion on the table, and we also have some members of the public that are present. If they have any comment, it'd be a good time to hear from them.
You want a second? first?
Sure,
I will
suppose.
second the motion. Thank you.
Not seeing any
Directors-
hands up in Zoom. Yeah, I believe there's
Oh, the
public on
ACWD
Zoom.
Oh.
Okay, but not seeing any hands.
Okay, not hearing any public comments, Mr. Pratt, comment? With that, I'll go ahead and I guess we'll call a roll.
Directors Huang,
Aye.
Sethy,
Aye.
Weed,
Abstain.
Akbari,
Aye.
and Gunther.
Aye. Okay, moving on to item 5.13.
Well, 5.13 is our marquee item for this evening. This is the chewy one right here, not the last one. This is a resolution amending the fiscal year 2024-25 budget and the 25-year capital improvement program for mid-cycle revisions. And this is the culmination of a whole lot of work by this board and of course by staff through a couple of workshops and the work preceding that leading up to this evening. So I think I will turn it over first to our Director of Finance and Administration, Mr. Wunderlich.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Stevenson. Good evening, members of the board, staff, and public. At last June's regular board meeting, the board adopted a 2-year budget to cover the current fiscal year as well as the next fiscal year 24-25 and a 25-year capital improvement program. As part of the district's 2-year budget cycle, the board reviews and adopts mid-cycle revisions to the budget and the CIP at the end of the first fiscal year. The proposed mid-cycle revisions were reviewed April 16th at the Finance and Administration Committee meeting, and then again May 23rd and May 30th at board workshops. Review and adoption of the amended fiscal year 24-25 budget and the 25-year CIP will help meet the district's strategic plan goals 3.2, ensure cost reasonableness, and 3.3, promote financial transparency. And the recommendation for this evening is by motion, adopt a resolution amending the fiscal year 2024-25 budget and the 25-year capital improvement program. But before we get to that point, I will turn the time over now to Mr. Sidney Elm, our financial analysis supervisor, who will supplement this report with a presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Wunderlich. Good afternoon or good evening, members of the board, members of the public and staff. My name is Sidney Elm. I'm the financial analysis supervisor for the district. So I'll be providing a brief presentation. So our agenda for this evening, so we'll get to the agenda. So we'll review the budget assumptions, review the proposed amended budget, review the metrics from our updated financial planning model, and then staff recommendation, as you heard. I would like to note that you have seen the presentation before at both budget workshops in May. So there's nothing new here. Staff did receive comments and feedback from the board, some guidance from the board, and staff already responded to the follow-up items to the board. So there's no changes from what you've seen before. But I'd like to still walk through for benefit of the public. So this is the the district 2-year budget cycle. As you heard a second ago, the board adopted the 2-year budget in June of 2023. Staff started working on the mid-cycle budget actually in January. So it's a 6 months process. Staff reviewed the preliminary budget at the Finance and Administration Committee in April, discussed with the board twice in May at the budget workshops. And here we are this evening, a year later, June 2024, for your consideration, the amended budget to fiscal year 24-25. So the budget includes some very key budget assumptions. The amended water revenue is based on lower demand forecasts. The the district approved a rate increase that went to effect March 1st of 2024. The budget assumed for next fiscal year, a 5.5% rate increase effective March 1st, 2025. And that's subject to changes during the upcoming rates workshop, which we will have this starting in July 18th. That's our first rates workshop to talk about rates. SFPUC increased rate 8.8%. That's an additional 2 million ongoing added to the budget. So the budget assumed full funding of our capital program with 30 million debt issuing in current fiscal year 24-25 to fully fund, to fund the capital project. So the 30 million will be 100% going towards the capital projects financing. The budget include continued evaluation of water supply reliability initiatives, include Delta Conveyance Project and Los Vaqueros expansion, as you just heard. It also include the cost of living adjustment effective July 1st, and as well as the aggressive contribution to pension and OPEB to achieve full funding by 2032. So we're still on track. The amended budget includes several proposed staffing changes. The key ones are adding 3 permanent positions, including one intern, removing 5 vacant meter reader positions. Those are the defined term position. They're vacant due to the completion of AMI project, converting 3 defined term position to full-time position, and reclassify 1 existing position for a total net reduction of 2 FTE. So taking the total position count from 244 district-wide to 242. So this is the total revenue for all funds. So the amended budget for fiscal year 24-25 total revenues is $161.5 million. That is 2.6 million lower compared to the fiscal year and 25 budget, 164.2. That's represent 1.6%. Water revenue, which makes up 80% of the budgeted revenue, is budgeted at 128.5 million. That's the reduction of about 3 million from the 131. And that's due to a lower demand forecast, as I just mentioned. Here's the total expenses. Total expenses at the very bottom, at the very right column, fiscal year 24-25 amended budget, 198.3 million. That's district-wide, that's all fund. The amended budget, that's increase of 10.6 million from the adopted budget. So the board adopted for next fiscal year, 187.7 million. The amended budget, the proposed amended budget is 198.3 million. And a couple of key or budget line items, source of supplies have gone up. Capital projects have also gone up. This slide shows the total cash balance for all fund. As you see here, the ending cash balance at the end of fiscal year 24-25 is $169.1 million. And that's a decrease lower compared to the adopted budget of 162.5. So it's about 6.8 million lower projected ending balance at the end of fiscal year 24-25. This includes, as you see there, debt proceeds of 30 million. That's assumed at that proceed in fiscal year in 25. When it comes to reserves and debt indicators, district maintain a healthy reserve, as you see there. It complies with the reserve policy that's adopted by the board on an annual basis. The reserve are above the reserve target, and debt coverage ratio as well above the 200% target against that by the board. You see the fiscal year ending 25 amended budget. The debt coverage ratio is at 381%, and the target is 200%. This includes the assumed debt, new debt in 24-25 fiscal year. So this represents the district's fiscal year 24-25 amended budget for the general fund. This shows the total general fund budget, expenditure budget by what we call cost center. As you see there, and the key to this is to show that for every cost center, there's a labor component to it. Capital project, for example, very little labor. And then operations and maintenance, there's a higher percentage that goes toward labor versus the other. So when we combine all the labor throughout the different cost center, it makes up about 33% of the total budgeted general fund budget. So the board reviewed the capital improvement plan in detail at the May 23rd budget workshops. So we wanted to just present for this evening a summary 10-year CIP by program. As you see here, the amount that's programmed into the CIP over the next 10 years through fiscal year 2032-33 averages about 74 million per year, as you see on the chart here. So this is one of the key metrics from our financial planning model that's been updated. What this does is shows the projected ending fund balance for the general fund. The proposed amended budget focuses on just the fiscal year 24-25. So this includes other assumptions that the board reviewed at the 2 budget workshops. So the projected ending balance in the general fund in fiscal year 24-25 is 99 million. That's about 33 million above the reserve target. That's fiscal year 24-25. That's right in the middle. But when we look out through the financial planning horizon through fiscal year 28-29, you see that ending balance, the fiscal year ending 29 has a low or ending balance that is about 600,000 below the reserve target. Slide. This is a projected bill demand. What this shows is that the amended budget assumed lower demand forecast as compared to the adopted budget. Long-term demand is about 1.7 million gallons per day lower. And staff will review this again, the demand forecast, and we'll come back and present updated demand after the summer season end as part of the rates workshop. So that coverage ratios, as I mentioned, still well above the 200% target. This assumes the 2 debt issuances, the 30 million that I mentioned earlier, and then another debt issuance in 2027. That's included in the financial planning model. This metrics compares the operating revenues to operating expenses. As you can see at the top chart there, the amended budget, starting in fiscal year 25-26, that's the fiscal year after the amended budget fiscal year, operating revenue will be sufficient to cover operating expenses plus depreciation. This is comparing rate revenue to revenue requirement. Revenue requirement is our district's general O&M and debt service. So this shows that you see a lot of red there. So the line, the red line, that's our operating rate and charge revenue. And then the bar, that's a revenue requirement. So the district, looking at this chart, there's a lot of gaps, and what the district relies on other funding sources. And in addition to the accumulated reserve, which is the case for the amended fiscal year 24-25 budget. So the district is using the accumulated reserve to pay for capital projects. So the district does rely on other funding sources to meet its revenue requirement, not solely depending on the rate and charge revenue. And this is our capital improvement program over the planning horizon. The bar, the chart at the top, are taller, each of the bar charts. That's because the amended budget, includes, increased funding for a capital improvement program, as well as the higher level of debt. So that the pink is the debt. And again, I mentioned two debt issuances, fiscal year end 25 and 27. And, both of these, debt issuance will go towards our capital, funding our capital projects. And that, final slide here, staff recommendation, as you heard earlier, by motion, adopt a resolution amending the fiscal year 2024-25 budget and the 25-year capital improvement program. That concludes staff presentation. Thank you.
May I start with some comments
Public comment first?
or questions?
Nobody's got their hand up, so Director Sethy, go ahead.
I have number of comments. First of all, you did a really good job over the last two financial reviews, and I think we had a pretty thorough discussion. I just want to compliment staff for what I know was a lot of hard work behind the scenes. So I'm going to express just some personal desires, if I may. One is, I would like to see us keep rate increases in the 3 to 4% neighborhood in line with Bay Area inflation. And so I'm not real supportive of a case that calls for a 5.5% increase next year. I am going to support adoption of the amended fiscal year budget mid-cycle with the mid-cycle revisions. But I'm going to do my effort in our future rate discussions to look at where we can modify what our current outlook is so that we keep the rate adjustments a little bit softer to absorb in the community. Second, noting our debt coverage, and I mentioned this in the last meeting, we're well above other water districts, and the amount of debt that we have is quite small for a district our size. I would encourage us, and I'm going to ask for numbers in our finance committee to go well above the $30 million proposal that is being made by staff right now. I believe we can handle up to 100 million and still meet our debt coverage ratio targets. The last area I wanted to talk about was the list that we received from staff of their wish list. And I went through this thoroughly, then I went through it again, then once more. And there are at least 4 things that I think that we should have on our near-term radar screen to fund. And I would not put them on the wish list. I would say these are things we have to get done. The first is the upgrade of cybersecurity tools. A lot of the new cybersecurity tools are using AI, and with a $1 million one-time expense and $500,000 a year annually for a subscription service, I think is a huge investment in the district with a good investment in the district with a huge ROI. Number 2 is where it calls out a maintenance shop and warehousing, adequately equipped, centrally located mechanical maintenance facility and staging or storage for emergency response materials and equipment. We're out looking $8 million on that. I'm not sure if that 8 million includes buying a building or buying land and then building on top of it. But I do know right down Fremont Boulevard here, the business parks, We have really nice complexes that have office space in front, workshop area in the back, and large steel cages for storing equipment. And we could certainly go down the street and lease something here. On the north side of Auto Mall Parkway, if you want something more central, just across the freeway, in the business park off Christie, you have similar facilities. And so I think this is really critical for the district. And we found out when we were looking at the brick funding opportunities through the federal government that they will cover seismic improvements and upgrading your underground infrastructure, but they will not pay for storage of and purchase of equipment in advance. And so that's where we have exposure, and I really think that we ought to make that a high priority. And I would first look at leasing a facility. Third, seismically actuated valves. Install automatically actuated valves at storage facilities and within distribution systems to limit or slow the loss of water following an earthquake. Again, to me, this is a nominal investment, low-hanging fruit, and we know we're getting toward the end of that 2,000-year curiosity in major quakes on the Hayward Fault. So I think this would be a really good investment for us there. And then for only $3 million, the last one I'm going to call out here, all of these are good ideas, but this is my priority list. Improve the emergency interconnections to have above ground backflow prevention and emergency connection capabilities. We did some of that when we were doing the large diameter seismic pipeline improvements. But the current interties are hard plumbed except for the connection at Mission with Hayward down by Dakota Road, the building that we pass through all the time. And everybody asks, well, what is that building? Ideally, this would have air gaps with swivels or backflow protection. And for $3 million, again, for the size of our geographic area, and this all relates to a major earthquake, we have to have these capabilities. So I would start, in my mind, there's no reason to hesitate. We have to have the upgrade of our cybersecurity tools. No doubt, no question in my mind. Let's get on top of it. So those are my comments. Thank you again for a good presentation.
Thank you.
Good week.
Thank you. Historically, for the last several years, we've been, even into the drought, we were putting $3 to $4, sometimes $5 million a month, every month, as an net increase in our bottom line total assets. We had that positive cash flow. During the drought, it was because of the drought surcharge. Now we're looking at month to month negative, are we not? Are we not looking at, for the first time, to use debt to help fund into the general fund, to support the general fund?
The district issued debt in the past. We currently have outstanding debt, 2 outstanding debts.
But this is not a debt service, this is actual debt funds being put into the general fund rather than to capital projects.
It's no different than any past debt issuance.
All right, well, we'll debate that. During the drought, we had in 2022 or 23, I look at this, last year, we had a $10,259,000 from a drought surcharge. That went away at the end of last year, of the beginning of this fiscal year. That was 8.4% of total revenues, was a one-time added charge that helped us out. That operated as a even though it was put on the commodity side, it really did act as a service charge or a fixed fee. So again, it comes back to how we do our future billing. But we just took away 8.4% of revenues from the prior year as the drought surcharge went away. We put in AMI. AMI, we went to ultrasonic meters, 55,000 meters, the residential, a major portion of our water sales. Recorded five, we said five, probably a higher percentage of sales than was actually consumed the prior year, because we had a more accurate reading of the low flows. That water, non-revenue water was reduced by significantly. So that would be another several $1 million a year that we picked up by having ultrasonic AMI meters. Over and above the 2 to 3 million we're losing. So when we have a net loss in total consumption, it really is a much greater loss. It's 2 to 3 times the loss that we're showing because we now have AMI meters. We have passed a curve and now we're on a leveraged, we're now going down in our water sales. And when you go down and you're offset where you're so much is on your fixed and a limited amount on your commodity, your net losses amount every month. The future development of the town, we just had, I call them the Capitol Avenue tenement, 126 units per acre. So the new development is not going to be using much water. We're going to have significant increases in population, but the impact to our water district is incredibly modest. It's an 8-story building going at Capitol and Paseo Padre. So hopefully the board, if we do a rate increase, will put the entirety of it on the service charge. And we may want to reconsider the drought surcharge, but I would call it a conservation surcharge, which in truth is what it is. It doesn't do.
We're a little bit off topic again,
No,
Director Weed. We're going to be discussing this in July.
Then we're looking at a budget where we had a surcharge. I'm suggesting the surcharge may be needed there because people are continuing to conserve.
I'm just
and
trying
we're
to bring
losing
us
revenues.
into, these are comments that are very appropriate here in our future July meetings regarding our rate structure.
Okay, well, in any case, as we look at this budget, recognize how it's structured. We're seeing a downturn in revenues. If you look from what was estimated to what is actual, they're dropping year to year and going into the future by several millions of dollars. And that is not a good trend. And it's one that will need a significant rate increase in order to compensate for the poor structure of our rates. Thank you.
Director Akbari.
Well, I don't have any questions or additional comments beyond what, we got to discuss over the last couple of weeks in our special board meeting. So I appreciate staff's taking our comments and reflecting that in program. And I'll just say I'm looking forward to discussing the rate structure in the July meeting. I think we probably have a different definition on what we would consider reliable revenue, but I'll save those comments to rate meetings.
So I actually have a clarification question. There seems to be some confusion about our debt issuance. Just want to clarify, I think I heard staff say that all the debt that we plan to issue is tied to capital projects and not for general fund, correct?
Correct.
And whenever we issue debt for capital program, they are tied to specific program, right?
Correct.
So there is no way for it to be confused with general fund. Is that correct?
It's in the official statement, yes.
Thank you. That's all I needed.
If I could just add a point of clarification,
Yes?
we do fund most of the capital program with the general fund.
That is correct.
And so by issuing bonds, we are reducing the general fund cash obligation in the next fiscal year for the capital program. So there is an interrelation.
There is an interrelation, but we are not going out to borrow money for the sake of making up shortfalls in the general fund. Is that correct?
Correct. The money's
you.
being borrowed to pay for capital projects.
In fact, in our bond documents, we have to name the exact projects that we're funding.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay, I have just a couple
It's-
comments.
It's difficult to
There
maintain.
have been
clear
several
discussion.
comments made about the rate structure. Not gonna get too into this because the rate structure is coming up next month. But the reason we're looking at a lot of this is AMI had finished early. That was great, by the way. We finished early. Well, that expense came in earlier. So we got to deal with it. Inflation, we're not alone on this. BART, I was listening to radio today. BART is heading towards a cliff next year. They're okay right now. They're in trouble. Oakland just sold today their property in the Coliseum. They're in trouble. Not that they haven't been in trouble for a long time anyway, but still, we are not alone here when you've got inflation. You've got San Francisco. You had AMI finishing early and we didn't even get into PFAS. These are expenses that we didn't see.
That's $60 million of
Our situation is lower. This is not due to a bad rate structure. And this is why we have a meeting next month to deal with that. So I fully support what's done. The staff's done a great job. We've identified what we have to do. We're being fiscally responsible. And I don't see what the problem is. But anyway, I'm not going to bring up it all because it comes later. So with that, I'd like to call for a motion.
I'll put forward the motion to approve the resolution on item 5.13.
I'll second.
A motion and a second. Secretary, please call the roll.
Directors Huang,
Aye.
Sethy,
Yes, aye.
Weed,
Aye.
Akbari,
Aye.
and Gunther.
Aye. Moving on. 5.14.
Yeah, 5.14 is a resolution declaring intent of the Alameda County Water District to reimburse itself for certain capital expenditures from the proceeds of indebtedness. And of course, we just talked about debt. And so we're going to talk about some of the strategy for ensuring that we're maximizing our ability to take advantage of debt. And this should be a short item. And if we'd like to take a break, we might want to do that after this. So just give that some thought. In the meantime, I'll turn it over to Mr. Wunderlich.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Stevenson. I guess first, just like to express appreciation for board support of the budget that was put forward and appreciation for my colleagues here from district staff, because that is a big effort for employees throughout the district. It's not just a finance effort. The budget that the board just approved includes a $30 million water revenue bond issuance in the next fiscal year. Due to IRS rules pertaining to bond issuances and how funds can be invested and how quickly they have to be spent because of their tax exempt status, it's customary when a public agency makes a determination that it will issue bonds in the future that it adopts what's known as a reimbursement resolution. And what adoption of that reimbursement resolution allows is that capital expenditures for a certain amount of time in it that occur before the bond issuance can then be reimbursed with bond proceeds. And that makes it a little easier to comply with those IRS rules pertaining to the spend down of tax exempt bond proceeds. And so what you have before you with item 5.14 is a resolution declaring the intent of the district to issue tax exempt bonds and to reimburse itself with those proceeds. As Director Sethy alluded to, you have to identify specific projects. We have identified within the resolution the advanced metering infrastructure project, a distribution system reservoir roof replacement and seismic upgrade projects, pipeline renewal projects, and the PFAS treatment system. as the four categories of projects that are eligible for bond funding pursuant to this reimbursement resolution. And so this resolution has also been reviewed with bond counsel as well as general counsel. So we've gone through all those proper legal reviews. And this is really just the first step in that eventual debt issuance that is identified within the budget. And so the recommendation is by motion, adopt a reimbursement resolution regarding the district's intention to issue tax exempt obligations, the interest with respect to which is excluded from gross income tax for federal tax purposes. And with that overview, I'd be happy to take any questions.
I'll just make a quick comment that we've been using a lot of our general fund money to fund these large-scale capital improvements in the district. And when you're looking at AMI, which has an expected life of 20 or more years, and our PFAS facility that will have a long-term life to it, some of these other projects like rebuilding an entire reservoir, that's expected to have a certain lengthy lifetime to it. And these projects should not be borne, in my opinion, by current ratepayers paying their water bills. It has to be spread out over the next 30 years because we will have future beneficiaries of these projects that are going in today. And the cost burden needs to be shared among everyone, present day population and those that are forthcoming to live in our communities. So I think this is a really good first step in using our debt coverage. I'm hoping that we can use more later on.
Okay, I would note that a reason I believe we need to go into debt now, use debt, is we'd had the advantage for a number of years of having water sales where amount of compensation we received gave us a premium, additional up to $3 to $4 million every month that we were able to utilize to build up the reserves, pay for these capital improvements. Now we're in reverse. We have a negative flow. We're getting, rather than a positive, we're getting a negative. And we have to make up for that with debt. That is the reality. That is the change in the direction, roller coaster of revenues and consumption. We've hit that peak. We had the drought surcharge for 1 year for a little over $10 million. That's gone away. We no longer have the drought to blame it on. And now we have to borrow money to cover it. And the trend is downward on water sales, and it's leveraged in the wrong direction for us as a district. Hopefully we can address that when we come to our rates.
Director Weed, I'm not going to drag things out here, but I'm hoping at next Tuesday's finance meeting to help better educate your understanding of where our finances are. I'll leave it at that.
Director Akbari.
Nothing from me.
Nothing from me, and just thank you, staff, for clarifying the same issue about general fund shortfall in the earlier item. So thank you very much.
And my comments from the last item still hold. I support this.
I have one question, Mr. Wonderly. Was there leftover debt money? Was I reading this staff analysis properly?
So the board last adopted a reimbursement resolution approximately 4 years ago because we had planned to partially debt finance the AMI project. And we ended up not issuing as much debt as anticipated with that reimbursement resolution from 4 years ago. So specific to the AMI project, there is still some legal authority to utilize that prior reimbursement resolution. And so that's kind of the specific detail of what's included there. And we were just trying to disclose within the staff report the last time we went through the process and what the outcome was.
So because we need to issue 30 million, which is over and above what we did last time. Are we covered moving into the future for a higher dollar amount?
Yeah, so the reimbursement resolution only restricts the amount. So when you issue the bonds, it restricts how much of the bond proceeds can be used to reimburse prior expenses. This would in no way limit the amount of a future bond issuance, because if we were to issue more than 30 million, amounts more than that could be used to fund future capital expenditures in the months or several years following the debt issuance. So this only restricts the reimbursement we could take at the time of the issuance. It does not restrict the total amount of the bonds.
Okay, got it. So, I'll move this, staff recommendation forward.
I'll second.
We have a motion, second. Secretary call the roll.
Directors Huang,
Aye.
Sethy,
Aye.
Weed,
Aye.
Akbari,
Aye.
and Gunther.
Aye.
I'm good to go if you want to continue here.
I was wondering, Mr. Pratt, you came in a little, do you have anything you would like to say to the board this evening? I can open up public comments for you. No? Okay. And moving on. I believe we're into
Those
our
would be
reports
item,
now.
yep, the 6 reports. Again, staff stands ready to answer any questions that the board may have on any of the reports.
I have one on the distribution hardness map.
Up a little bit.
Okay.
Well, we had a pretty good report across the, service area for the 3 cities. But I did notice one anomaly.
Uh-oh. Okay. Eagle Eye Board, we can't get anything
There
past you.
was one blue box. And it was sitting right where Director Weed's buildings are.
Did you pay your water bill, Director? Whit?
And to me, I just thought to myself, wow, there was some, a hardness attack on his property sites. And it just stood out like a sore thumb.
Well, we do have an acting backup interim Director of Operations and Maintenance here, Mr. Bob Marshak. I can't swear that Mr. Marshak will have a detailed response like that, but we'd be happy to provide a little bit more context. Unless Mr. Marshak has anything to add.
I do not.
Okay.
I was gonna blow up the hardness map. Put Weed's name right there.
Oftentimes little anomalies like that, I think, are due to some timing and when the samples were collected and what was happening within the distribution system across multiple days. We sample throughout the month, and sometimes there's variances in hardness and so forth throughout the month. And
And
so,
it was only one blue box.
yeah.
Entire-
Yeah, it seems odd, but I really don't think we were picking on Director Weed.
No, actually, I think it's just the artifact of the coloring, because if
Oh.
you look at actually the hardness is actually not that different
Right.
than its
Yeah.
neighbor.
And the hardness is well within the standards of the
Versus
district. It's
134 on
not
the
going
top.
beyond.
Well, that's a good reminder to staff. You guys don't miss anything.
125, yeah. Yeah, no, I think Director Weed's neighborhood just happened to reach the cutoff of
Just the
135.
threshold.
Yes.
Any other comments, questions about the reports?
I'll just make a quick report. Under the LICA meeting minutes, we had a chance to go over some results from a demographic survey that ACWD had done, and I would just point it out to the directors that there was a lot of very interesting information in there on some of the demographics of our customer base, and then their sense of how ACWD is doing and some of their concerns that they have for long-term future of the district. So I just wanted to call that out as a very, very interesting survey.
Yeah, that's great. And in fact, we are planning to bring that customer satisfaction survey, the results to the full board coming up soon. And Adam Perbolski, who shared with the committee, will also be here present with the board and be happy to review the survey results at the full board. I totally agree. A lot of really good information in there.
Okay. 6.2. Operational reports. Nope, got that one. I think we're into staff presentations.
And staff is ready to present. We wanted to sort of celebrate completion of phase 1 of our water resources master planning process and, roll up our sleeves and get ready to jump into phase 2, which is where, a lot of the work will be. So to help us make that transition, I'll ask our Director of Water Resources, Ms. Heides, to kick us off.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Stevenson. Rather than balloons and confetti for celebrating, I have a short presentation. And I will just jump right in. Next slide, please. And on April 25th, you likely recall that we held a board workshop to share input received during phase 1, the various polling, interested party meetings and such. We presented the resulting phase 2 approach to work. And we received feedback from the directors and the public on the phase 2 approach. It was a productive workshop and we received constructive, thoughtful feedback from directors. Director Akbari wasn't able to be present at that meeting, but knowing that the board does want to all be in alignment on this, we briefed him on June 4th to cover the same material as well. So part of today's plan for being here is to really just get us all back on the same page of where things landed with the input as we launch into phase 2. So next slide, please. Here's a recap of the project roadmap. And as you can see, we're right there in the middle in June 2024 and finalizing the scope and beginning the phase 2 procurement. So we're excited to be at this place and close to launching into phase 2. So next slide, please. So I won't go over the proposed goals in detail as these remain the same as we talked about in the workshop itself. There's 5 goals that are really key to what we'll be looking at in the phase 2 plan and all around the topics of sustainability, affordability, and equitability, resilient and optimized water service, healthy watersheds and aquifers, and collaborative leadership as some of the themes that the board had aligned on. Next slide, please. And the proposed 2050 Water Resources Master Plan planning objectives are also summarized here. Again, the same as what we discussed in the workshop. There are 8 of them, and I won't go through all of them, but we wanted to make sure we did have them for reference here today in case there's any additional questions or thoughts along these around the goals and or the objectives. Next slide, please. So the biggest piece that I just wanted to share briefly today was the director's comments that we received and the revised phase 2 scope changes that we made. Overall, the directors generally supported the direction and approach for the phase 2 scope that we presented on the April 25th. But a couple of areas where we wanted to make some adjustments based on feedback. So polling provides a unique public perspective was something that was brought up in the workshop. So the phase 2 scope does include the opportunity to conduct additional public polling if we wish as an extra task. There was also feedback that we have an opportunity to educate the public about water issues. So the phase 2 scope will also include an educational component. There was also a suggestion that we consider surface water transfers as one of the water supply options. So we added that transfers to the list of options we'll put on the list of all the things we're going to be looking at. There was also some feedback about stress testing the portfolios relative to climate change being critical. So that that was addressed in the phase 2 adjustments, noting that reliability is a criterion that all of the portfolios will be tested on as we go through the various portfolios and try and determine which one makes the most sense for our path forward. Next slide, please. So just a quick recap again of the phase 2 process overview. You'll see the steps here that we went over on the 25th of April. And we are now at that phase of, we're essentially finalizing the goals in that first box that'll launch us into phase 2. We're already kicking off internally some of the supply and demand forecasting for that piece. But ultimately, when we get phase 2 going, we'll be developing the water resource options and strategies further, developing portfolios, looking at the portfolio performance of the different options, and then selecting a preferred portfolio. So that's the basic process we'll be taking down the road. And next slide, please. And this is a little more complicated graphic that shows some of the check-ins that we anticipate with the board. This is just sort of an estimated schedule. It's kind of the third icon down. It shows a little people gathered around a table, a little bit hard to see on the screen, but those are the check-in points with the board. So we anticipate later this fall, beginning work and then checking in with the board probably around January-ish timeframe, and April and July are noted on the schedule. This will be subject to change depending on the procurement and the scope and the final schedule that we develop as we finalize that plan and launch into phase 2. But this is essentially the different steps that we plan to take. So last slide, please. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions on this. We're excited to move forward, and we really appreciate the board's engagement and feedback during the workshops and the follow-up. And we are looking forward to hearing any feedback you have tonight. And then we anticipate being back hopefully later this summer in the fall with procurement for jumping into phase 2.
Good job.
Okay, and I will pass that on to the team. I'm here today as the ambassador just to do the quick recap, but I will pass that on to the team. Thank you, Director Sethy.
Well, it strikes me that in long-range planning, one of the options is to recognize future water supply opportunities or conveyance mechanisms that may not be in our current CIP, but could even be beyond the 25 years. I believe a sound water planning principle is to avoid open channel conveyance. That's been an established belief. You're subject to extortion whenever you're in an open channel. We've seen it in Palisades Channel, and we do have a pipeline proposed there. Alameda Creek is another open channel that I think we need to look at alternatives to the open channel conveyance. I would hope that we would recognize that and somehow put in specifically the Niles Canyon Aqueduct facility, which is at least laid out, the right of way is there, and has much of the grading and tunneling taken place for future use. And it's also recognized its historic character. There's been some environmental impact statements recently which would destroy that asset. So, and without it being in place, when there's another program, an EIS that just came out for the rebuilding and of the rail system in Fremont. If we have such a plan or proposal in our plans, then when the railroad does modify, change, and upgrade their rail tracks or double track the tracks through Niles, for example, we could then ask them to accommodate the future developments. That's why it's important to try and put in not only what we are immediately ready to fund, but what our future reviews are. So I would toss in the Niles Canyon Aqueduct as a area of concern to me, and hopefully something we can identify in our planning. Thank you.
Nothing for me.
Moving on then, General Manager's report.
Okay, we do have a few, I think, relatively quick general managers reports. First of all, participation in the Fremont 4th of July parade. This is something the board's very familiar with. On May 30th, Shireen Gonzalez sent you all an email that listed a number of outreach activities and community activities that the district will be participating in. I think a fan favorite is the Fremont 4th of July Parade, and that's something that we often have a fair amount of board engagement in. So the theme this year for that parade is peace, love, and Fremont. Unfortunately, I am probably not going to be able to make it this year, but don't worry. We still have it in hand. That's not going to stop us. And we invite all of you to join us. We do know, so far we've heard back from Director Huang and Director Sethy, I believe, who's not able to make it, but Director Huang is planning to make it. If anybody else is planning to be there, please let Shireen and or me know, and we can make sure that you're all set up. And we're looking forward to another good time at the parade. Any questions about that or comments? Any confirmations of your plans to be there or not?
I'll be there.
I'll be there.
Okay, all right.
I'll try to make it.
We've got a quorum. Okay. All right. Okay, so next up is the Government Finance Officers Association Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. And Mr. Wunderlich can tell us about that.
Sure, and I'll just read from the notice we received. Government Finance Officers Association of the United States and Canada has awarded the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting to Alameda County Water District for its annual comprehensive financial report for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2023. The report has been judged by an impartial panel to meet the high standards of the program, which includes demonstrating a constructive spirit of full disclosure to clearly communicate its financial story and motivate potential users and user groups to read the report. Certificate of Achievement is the highest form of recognition in the area of governmental accounting and financial reporting, and its attainment represents a significant accomplishment by a government and its management. And this is our 25th year in a row of being so recognized. And so, again, that's a congratulations to the accounting team for a job well done.
Congratulations, team. It's huge. But you've established such a long track record now. If you don't get it one year, that's going to be seen as a major failure.
Yeah, no pressure.
Okay, ready to move on to, I have one last one and it's late breaking, but I wanted to make sure that I share this with the board. You know, there's always an internal competition among staff for various things. And of course, awards are one of them. So not to be outdone by Finance's award, I just wanted to report on yet another Capio award, and I'll pass it down so you all can take a look. This is something we're getting pretty good at. The Capio is the California Association of Public Officials. This award is for their EPIC program, and this is their highest honor, representing the quote, best in communication programs throughout the state. ACWD's entry was our Meet the Crowd favorite. And I'll pass these out too. And it seems simple, but there's power in simplicity. So you can take one and pass it down and you can see what the district won this award for. These are small bamboo plant stakes that have a simple positive message on one side and our logo and a QR code on the other side. People love these things. You know, we've got lots of materials that we use to engage with the community, resources to have them help them take advantage of our water use efficiency and conservation programs. We first rolled these out at the Alameda County Fair last summer, and there's 455,000 people, something like that, attending. And we were basically sold out at the end of that fair, and found that people really like these because they're small and they're easy for people to take home. They have some utility, and they include far more information than we could ever hand out at a table at an event, because that QR code links anybody who's interested to all the resources on our website. And we saw website activity and interest in our water resources and water use efficiency and conservation programs go way, way up as a result of passing those out. And so we've been including those in our various community events since then. And so that was the basis of our Capio Award this time around, and our public affairs folks and others are super proud of that work. Very innovative.
How many of these were handed out?
Well, we've been handing them out for a little over a year now, so, or for about a year. So at the fair, I believe it was, we had 1,600 of those, of the little stakes, and I think we pretty much, got rid of all of them. We had to order some more. They're very inexpensive, less than 40, well, about 45 cents a piece, and, super popular.
And who came up with the idea?
Our staff. The genesis was, we were supporting the Save Our Water California outreach booth at the fair. We found out they were giving away poppy seeds, and that's been our big draw. And so we tried to talk them out of their poppy seeds. They wouldn't do it, so we had to find something different. And so staff got together, they brainstormed and came up with this idea, and it's been a hit. So
Great idea.
yeah, that completes our general manager's reports.
Hey, we got
I
on the
think we could
directors.
use a break right now.
Okay, we can
It's
break right
okay.
now. Come back for director comments, think, 5 minutes there or 10?
Yeah, fine.
Yeah, I have 7:36 right now.
Come back at 41.
45?
Yeah, you know what,
41.
45. You can make it 40. And we're finishing our second fiscal year this month. Already in that time period, 5 of our members have changed over. So we had appointment of a new chair yesterday, Anthony Hansen from Delta Mendota, and who's our current vice chair. We elected Mike Tognolini, who's the head of water resources at East Bay Mud, to be vice chair. I put both of those nominations in. And we appointed a new director, swore her in, and that is Kathy Aaron from the Zone 7 board. She was a longtime council member in Pleasanton, a very pleasant person to know. And she just won her second term on the Zone 7 board in the March election. So Steve Ritchie, myself, and Anthony Hansen are the last 3 remaining. And I'm the only one of the officers that's an elect. So I'm going to continue in my role as treasurer for the 3rd fiscal year. We approved last year's audit report, which we had reviewed in our finance committee a couple times. We adopted the new fiscal budget for 24-25, the same one we did kind of like tonight. So there was a lot of work that went into that new budget. We extended some of our consulting agreements. Then we had a program management update, which went into a lot of detail on budget and schedule, where we are, different agreements right now, and then the design and permitting. I'll come back to that in a minute here. We have our executive director's reports and on federal relations, what's going on with reclamation, DWR, California Water Commission, all of these different engagements. But I want to come back to the design and construction because having reviewed our package ahead of the meeting, I didn't have time to raise this with Ed or Mr. Wunderlich day before. So I was reviewing it late at night, but
came to my attention that on the Transfer Bethany pipeline, where they were laying out the schedule for right-of-ways on conservation parcels and the time to complete memorandums of understanding, both of those are forecast to occur before the end of next year, maybe even mid-year, with appraisals and purchase offers being made in to 2026 and also completed quite early. But then there is a 4-year waiting period with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services to approve all of the revisions to the conservation easements. So I brought it to the attention of everyone yesterday and said that I found this to be very disturbing, that one regulatory agency could drag things out, and that every year that goes by, the cost of actually starting construction and building the transfer pipeline is going through the roof. And this has to be unacceptable to all of the 8 agencies that are participating, at least the minus Grasslands and Contra Costa that are not funding it. So the 6 districts have to put their feet down, say, no, we cannot work this way. And I suggested yesterday that we engage U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services now, get them on board, fill them in on everything that we're doing. Anthea Hansen backed me up and she said, we don't want to run the risk that they're going to say no down the road. And Steve Ritchie backed me up and said, you know, we may even want to consider a backup alignment that doesn't go over these conservation easements. And we are working closely with the state officials. So we seem to be working in harmony with them. But to have a federal agency stand and block our path forward, to me, is quite disturbing. So General Manager Steve Ritchie, Director Ritchie, had some very apropos comments, and I was glad to see that I was backed up by the other directors on the board and the staff of the JPA, the executive director, and Hallmark are both committed to taking a much closer look. I suggested bringing, quote, all pressure to bear on this situation and bring in reclamation, bring in the Department of DWR, let the California Water Commission know what's going on, because every year of delay means that we have to go to the legislature again for an inflation adjustment. So it's costing everybody a tremendous amount of money. So that's my report on Delta Conveyance.
Is that Delta Conveyance or?
I'm sorry, on the Los Vaqueros Reservoir.
Right. Let me suggest that one can look at the Delta Conveyance situation where we also have conservation easements on the other side of the Bethany Reservoir. These were not put there by chance. It was a deliberate effort to try and restrict future water resource development in the state and transfers. And in this case, well, there is an option. You can tunnel, as we are doing with the Delta Conveyance under the conservation easements, and throwing in an extra $1 billion or $2 billion to avoid the this planned and programmed sabotaging of the water supply in the state of California.
Would you like to come and make that presentation at next month's board meeting?
Would be,
You're welcome to come. It's open.
thank you. I mean, these are, it's tragic to see the group that is trying to limit growth and immigration. There's an element that's unfortunately strongly associated with the Democratic Party that is even more anti-immigrant than the most strident supporters of the current Republican leadership. Thank you.
Well, I'm going to take item 7.2, board president appointment to the Delta Conveyance Design and Construction Authority. ACWD and Zone 7 share and rotate the Class 2 director and alternate seats on the Delta Conveyance Design and Construction Authority, DCA board. Current appointments, Sarah Palmer as director, John Weed as alternate, expire in June in accordance with the letter of understanding between ACWD and Zone 7. For the upcoming 2-year term, the director seat will shift to ACWD and the Zone 7 seat will become the alternate. ACWD and Zone 7 need to inform the DCA of their appointments for the next 2 years. Terms by July 1st, Zone 7 intends to appoint Sarah Palmer as alternate, and ACWD needs to identify and reaffirm our appointment. The ACWD board previously authorized the board president to make the appointments to the DCA board. I want to inform the board of my intentions to continue the appointment of Director Weed to the DCA board on behalf of the ACWD, representing ACWD in Zone 7 in Class 2. I do have interest in this, however, not now. So I am pushing Director Weed forward. Expectation would be that Director Weed would represent the interests of both ACWD and Zone 7, not the interest of just one agency or one director. I wanted to share my thinking with the board, receive any inputs. Does anybody have any inputs on this?
I'm in approval, and I will say that this really is a showcasing of the tail wagging the dog, because I'm chairing the DCFA. John will be chairing the DCA.
Well, not sharing. Sarah Palmer did share it the last 2 years. That's
representing our interests. We're a 1% interest in the state water project or thereabouts, and that is the dog that we're wagging.
I find it.
Congratulations.
I think it's very important that we're on these.
Well, thank you for your confidence. And it's really the, when it comes to DCA, it's the state. You represent the interests of the entire state of California that are beneficiaries of the state water project.
I think far too often this project is considered a Southern California project. Sure, you will represent us well.
That's because that's curious when you see some of the mindset of people that are willing to don't want to send the water down into South to Fresno and turn down project units there that or irrigation districts because they were too far south. But don't view us as being part of the same social set.
As I always have to remind people, if you're south of the Delta, you're part of Southern California.
Okay. Other comments on that?
South of the estuary, season
Okay.
water supply.
Well, with that, we have 3 closed session items this evening. And we can knock these puppies out. That would be lovely. So that I'd like to read it to the closed session.
I'm happy to take you into the closed session. It is now 7:59, and as President Gunther said, there's going to be 3 closed session items. Item 8.1 is pursuant to California Government Code Section 54957.6. Conference with labor negotiators. The agency designated negotiators for this closed session are Ed Stevenson, Jonathan Wunderlich, Amy Reeve, and Stacy Q. And the employee organization is Operating Engineers Local 3 and Alameda County Water District Operators Association. The second closed session, item 8.2, is also pursuant to California Government Code Section 54957.6. Conference with labor negotiators. The agency designated negotiators for this closed session are Ed Stevenson, Jonathan Wunderlich, and Amy Reeve. And this is for the unrepresented employees, management, confidential, and professional employees. In the third closed session, item 8.3 is pursuant to California Government Code Section 54957.6. Conference with labor negotiators. The agency designated negotiators for this closed session are your board president, Gunther, and vice president Huang. and the unrepresented employee is the general manager. We can now convene into closed session.
Recording in progress.
Okay, the directors are back from closed session. And I'd like to request council to read out.
Sure, I'm happy to read out. The board convened in closed session for 3 items. The first item was item 8.1 pursuant to California Government Code Section 54597.6. Conference with labor negotiators, agency designated negotiators Ed Stevenson, Jonathan Wunderlich, Amy Reeve, and Stacy Q. Employee organization, operating engineers local 3 and the Alameda County Water District Operators Association. In that closed session, direction was given to the designated negotiators. The second closed session, item 8.2 pursuant to California Government Code Section 545, I think this is backwards again, 54957.6, conference with labor negotiators, agency designated negotiators, Ed Stevenson, no, it's not backwards, it's right. Agency designated negotiators Ed Stevenson, Jonathan Wunderlich, and Amy Reeve, unrepresented employees, management confidential professional employees, and in that closed session, direction was given to the agency negotiators. And item 8.3 pursuant to California Government Code Section 54597.6, conference with labor negotiators, agency designated negotiators, Board President Gunther and Vice President Huang, unrepresented employee general manager. And in that closed session, no action was taken. And that concludes the closed session reports. And do you have one open session item?
Correct. Moving on to item 9.
Yeah, 9.1 is consideration of a resolution approving the 3rd Amendment to the employment agreement with the general manager.
I'm going to request our legal counsel read this one out, please.
Yeah, and the reason we need to, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give an open session report. It's required by the law to identify the key terms of the amendment, the proposed amendment to the 3rd Amendment. So as background, on June 10th, 2021, the district entered into an employment agreement with Ed Stevenson to employ him as the district's general manager. On June 9th, 2022, and on June 8th, 2023, the district and general manager entered into the 1st Amendment and 2nd Amendment to the employment agreement to increase the general manager's compensation based on the general manager's performance evaluation. The district and the general manager desired to amend the employment agreement to increase the general manager's compensation from step 4 to step 5 of the salary schedule and to include a 3.14% cost of living adjustment for a total annual salary of $323,186. And that would be effective the pay period that includes July 1, 2024. All other terms and conditions of the employment agreement will remain the same. So the board may discuss this item and the board may consider a motion to adopt the resolution approving the 3rd Amendment to the employment agreement between the district and Ed Stevenson.
You have a motion?
I will make a motion to adopt the resolution approving 3rd Amendment to employment agreement with general manager, please.
I'll second.
Motion in a second. Secretary, please call the roll.
Directors Huang,
Aye.
Sethy,
Aye.
Weed,
Aye.
Akbari,
Aye.
and Gunther.
Aye. Nothing further on the agenda. I will
Well, let me
call-
just, if you don't mind, make a quick comment. This is always awkward for me. I do appreciate your support, the support of this board. You guys have been super supportive of me and obviously supportive of the agency. I'm super partial to this agency, and so that support means a whole lot. And I appreciate the trust that you've placed into me. So thank you.
Thank you. With that, I'll declare the meeting adjourned before 10 o'clock.